Abujun way maganito winakigan way dan indogo makwan dem ga nisho gamag hindunji ga mesquaya ko kaginda bangiet go nishnabemum. Um, so my spirit name is He Who Protects the Earth, which is why I chose to do my presentation on environmental racism. So, what is environmental racism? Environmental racism is a systematic form of racism whereby communities of color are disproportionately burdened with health hazards through policies and practices that force them to live in proximity to sources of toxic waste, such as sewage works, mines, landfills, power stations, etc. As a result, these communities suffer greater rates of health problems. Prairie Island. Prairie Island Indian Community is among the closest communities in the nation to a nuclear power plant and temporary nuclear waste storage site. And this is a picture of the XL Energy nuclear power plant. Look at how it's located, like right next to the Mississippi River. Um, and XL Energy was formerly known as the Northern States Power Company. And we'll get into a little bit of history. So in 1973, Northern States Power Company's Prairie Island Nuclear Power Plant officially opened as the first nuclear reactor goes online. And 16 years later, in 1989, facing unresolved spent nuclear fuel storage problems, NSP announced that it will develop a dry cask storage facility at the Prairie Island plant. In 1994, the Minnesota legislature approved the use of 17 casks, but adds conditions, including that NSP must search for a new storage site in Goodhue County away from the Prairie Island, and NSP must make commitments to develop renewable energy sources. The legislature requires the state and NSP to sign a binding contract, giving the Prairie Island Indian community a third party standing to enforce the legislation. In 1996, the Prairie Island Indian community and NSP brought to the state legislature an agreement that would allow NSP to keep the storage casks on the Prairie Island Indian community in return for compensation to the community, including the option to relocate the tribal members. However, legislature rejected the deal. Of course, why would they want to give back our land or give us new land to live on? Excel Energy. So this is a picture of the the storage casks that hold the nuclear waste, and there are 29 of them currently that sit on the Mdewakanton ancestral land, and they're just 600 yards away from tribal members' homes. And these 29 casks, they hold 1.5 million pounds of nuclear waste, and they're just sitting there with no permanent storage solution. So let's get back into a little more history here. In July 1996, the U.S. Court of Appeals in District Columbia ruled that the Department of Energy must honor its obligation to begin accepting the nation's nuclear waste by January 31st, 1998. August 1996, NSP filed an application with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for an offsite storage facility in Florence Township in accordance with the 1994 legislature. So Florence Township would be in the Goodhue County area. Then in October 1996, so just a few months after that, application, the Minnesota Environmental Quality Board denied NSP's request to certify the Florence Township site. And it says that the safest place to store the nuclear waste is on a prairie island next to the reservation, right next to the Mississippi River. In addition, the Environmental Quality Board authorized NSP to fill the next 4 casks of nuclear waste. So they started out with 17, and then in 1996 they were started filling the next 4. So in February 1998, the Department of Energy's deadline to accept the nuclear waste had passed. The Department of Energy hadn't even determined what standards a national repository must meet, even though they had been collecting money for utilities since 1982 to build a permanent repository. Then we'll fast forward to 2002. So in 2002, the Department of Energy recommends Yucca Mountain as a national repository for spent nuclear fuel. Congress later override the state of Nevada's veto of the project and allows the NRC to consider licensing the Yucca Mountains. In 2012, so 10 years later, the U.S. Department of Energy submitted a license application for the Yucca Mountains. Then 8 more years later, in 2020 is the earliest date the Department of Energy expects to begin receiving the nation's spent nuclear waste at the Yucca Mountains. The only problem I have with that is here's a picture of the Yucca Mountains. The Yucca Mountains are in Nevada, and they are a sacred area and treaty homeland of the Western Shoshone Nation. So just seems like us natives can't win. And I will just like to leave with this video.
One of the prophecies was this, in very simple words. The prophet, the spirit that spoke to the people, said to the people, and that's us, the Anishinaabe people, said, "You shall know the truth of these things when these things shall come about." And you know what he described? Here's the words. In the language, it sounds like this: "In Guding, Ejuebak, Oma King, the manadad nibe, Minuagigo, Anga Kashpiasin the Amwat." And in those words, the English interpretation is this: that you shall know the truth of these teachings and the truth of these prophecies when the time shall come that the rivers will run with poison and the fish become unfit to eat. Has that happened? You think it's untrue? It was prophesied. It was prophesied then too that in the time of the 7th fire, a new people would rise up. And when I first heard that, I thought perhaps it meant only Indian people. But I realize now that what was prophesied is that there's got to be a new people. Because the people that we're dealing with now are going to destroy the earth. And along with that destruction is going to be the destruction of all of us. And so there's got to be, and there is slowly rising a new people that will begin to appreciate each other for who they are, for their differences, for the differences in the way they look at things, and the way that they think about things, and therein to me is the salvation of humanity. Otherwise, it ain't. Otherwise, we're gone. There ain't going to be no seventh generation for any of us.